We're about to start our Southern Cameroons Southeast conference series with a presentation from a featured guest, our eminent professor from South Africa and eminent influencer of our struggle, Professor Ayangwe. He's going to be leading us in a very thoughtful presentation that will try to help us rekindle some of the momentum that we have basically lost along the way, as well as, you know, just the geopolitical situation that the world has been facing. I've talked about the plight of our people that continues to deteriorate, but I also talked about the situation with the pandemic. So we have been remote in a lot of things, but this is one of the first times that we're coming on, you know, face to face in our meetings. Our featured title of our conference talk today is "Where Did We Go Wrong?" A reflection on the lessons from the Amazonian Revolution and how to correct the course. So without much ado, as we all know, there is not much else that we can say about Professor Ayangwe. Again, he's not just a historian of African history, but he's the most, again, preeminent historian of our struggle, of Cameroon history, of basically all that we have experienced and recorded in our life together within the Southern Cameroons and the Cameroon Union. So without much ado, as I said, let me welcome Professor Ayangwe.
Camera here.
Just do your thing, it's watching you.
Just do my thing. Yeah, comrades, it's my pleasure being here, and I think we're going to have a wonderful exchange, discussion, conversation. What I propose to do to address the topic that was just announced is to go through a series of questions, and which I had the privilege of having before. I think was submitted by the Southeast here, a number of questions, and I'll just go through them and crave your indulgence, just a bit patient, so that I'll go through all of that presentation, and then after that we can then have a discussion, interaction, questions and answers, completion of certain matters which perhaps I didn't look at them in depth. I always start this conversation on our struggle with what I call framing our struggle. The reason is that we've spent 5 years sending contradictory messages to the outside world, even amongst ourselves. I did not tell you that people talk of restoration, that people say that we are federation, that people say that we are unionists, or all kinds of things. And one of the difficulties we have with the outside world, and I've had the occasional privilege to interact with some of these people outside world, some personalities, and they still cannot understand what we are fighting about. What is our issue? So I think it's very important for us to frame this struggle so that we send a coherent and consistent message to the outside world, and even convince ourselves about what we are doing, what we are fighting for. Now, the starting point, of course, goes back to what I call the colonial legacy of incomplete decolonization. We all know the story, the plebiscite and all of that. I do not belabor that. How our early politicians even begged the United Nations. This thing is too rushed. First of all, is it necessary even to have a plebiscite? We don't need a plebiscite. Other countries are simply granted their independence consistent with what Article 76B of the UN Charter says. Grant them independence, that's it. Why do we have to go through a plebiscite? Of course, we know what the British manufactured, that we were economically not viable to stand on our own. Of course, that was a cock and bull story. It's not correct, it's not true. And they knew that it was not true. But even then, our political leaders of the day presented to the UN the conclusion of the Manfred Conference. Very clear. If we must have a plebiscite, the question should be secession from Nigeria or not. That was very clear. And listen to the language. For me, it's always intrigued me that even today when you talk to many Nigerians, they'll tell you that we seceded from Nigeria. So, as far as they're concerned, we seceded. French Cameroon is saying we secede. Nigeria said we secede. So that's what the Manfred Conference was saying. And it made sense at that time because the only country that should have been involved in this thing was Nigeria, since the British had put us together, administered us for administrative inconvenience with Nigeria. So it was a question of simply whether we stay with Nigeria or we let Nigeria, which they call secession. So the previous question was either integration with Nigeria or secession from Nigeria. That is what the Manfred Conference said. Okay, that's what has been decided. The UN rejected that. They want to listen. The leaders said, okay, you don't want to. You are imposing on us. Nigeria or French Cameroon. We don't know what French Cameroon has to do with all of this whole thing. But even if that was saying, why don't you postpone this thing just for 1 year to give our people time to think about their future? Again, they said no. It must be now. It must be now. So this whole thing was precipitated, was rushed. And what was even more, the choices, what they call choices, were really no choice. There was really no political status option of separate independence, which is what the UN Charter says, which is what relevant international law instruments say. Give the people the right. You want to ask them, should they join one country or another? Or do you want to federate, whatever thing? But it must include also a choice of separate independence. That one was removed. So actually I had no choice. As a result of that, we found ourselves where we found ourselves in 1961. The leadership tried to make the best they could of a very bad situation and were able to negotiate what we later call a federation. And that federation at that time was actually, in legal terms, we call a free association between two countries, two peoples, each of them administering themselves the way they have been by the former colonial authorities, with just a weak center. That was the conception. And French Cameroon accepted that. And in a note verbal which was sent to the British government to the United Nations, they accepted. We call that a unilateral treaty, saying yes, the basis on which we are going to be associated with the Southern Cameroon was on the basis of a federation. We went into all of that. So again, I don't want to go into history because I know what happened. They turned things around, abused the whole thing. What was initially thought to be a federation of two countries coming together, they turned it around. It became what we call an absorptive federation. And they themselves went to promulgate a constitution, even before it was in August. And they wrote in that constitution that they were receiving back a part of their country that had been estranged from them. So in other words, for them, right at that stage, it was a question of grabbing territory. As if that was not enough, we know what happened in 1972. They took a unilateral decision to scrap the federation. Even at that time, the federation was not really very, very effective. They removed their federation unilaterally, arbitrarily, and anybody who was alive at that time, who was aware of what happened, we know what happened at that time, and it was an imposition. So that is what we had. At that moment, when that happened, the relationship between what was then called West Cameroon and French Cameroon snapped. It was a fundamental change. The condition under which we had agreed to freely associate no longer existed. And that removed any obligation, any legal obligation, to continue in any form of association with French Cameroon. That is the law. That is the law. So at that moment, what happened in 1972? The Ambazonian, and I'm afraid I must go back to start talking about Ambazonian nationalism, which at that time was frozen, emerged. And what we saw happen in 2016 was actually the reignition of this decolonization struggle, which had been lying in abeyance, which they have been suppressing by all means. We know the ritual every 1st October had to kill people, imprison people, and torture people. We know that. So 2016 represented, the loyal revolt represented a reignition of that particular struggle. Notice that French Cameroon is the third colonization we are experiencing. From 1887, when Britain transferred the entire Victoria district and its hinterland, sphere of influence, that means all the hinterland, to German in 1887 till today. We are talking about how many? 135 years about, isn't it? So for 135 years, we've been experiencing continuing colonization. The Germans came, went. The British came, went. And they were experiencing now by French Cameroon a black-on-black colonization. And many people outside do not see this because it's a black-on-black colonization. If French Cameroon were a white country, everybody would have picked it up straight away. But colonialism has no color. It doesn't matter. Colonialism is the same. And so what, therefore, is our struggle? Our struggle is a struggle for decolonization. The armed conflict we are experiencing now, our people are fighting, is an anti-colonial war, a war of decolonization, a war of national liberation from French colonization and annexation. This must be very clear. It is exactly the same kind of decolonization we're talking about, which other African countries went through in the 60s and the 70s up to about the 80s. So it is an anti-colonial war we are fighting for decolonization. So on the one hand, we have Ambazonians fighting for independence. What is independence? Independence simply is a state or condition of being free from dependence on some other country. Then you have French Cameroon on the other side. Why would French Cameroon be fighting in this war? French Cameroon is a colonial oppressor and occupier. Its agenda is to impose and eternalize colonization of Ambazonians and grab their territory. They have no other, that's their agenda. We want to masters here, we're imposing, you have to listen to us, and their territory become our territory. That is what it is, in clear terms. So for us, this struggle is an existential struggle. Our very existence is tied in here. Our very existence as human beings because there's physical extermination going on. Our very existence as a cultural group distinct from them, cultural genocide going on. Our very existence as a people who have territory. That territory, French Cameroon is seeking to grab that territory. So we've spent years, I've always said I challenge people, we've spent decades fighting in a civilized way, what you may call a civilized way. Because we opted for peaceful means of decolonization. We didn't decide to say right from the beginning we organize ourselves in an armed struggle like it happened in many African countries. It was peaceful means. What did we do? We sent deputation. We wrote memoranda to the authorities in Yaoundé. We litigated locally and externally in Nigeria and the Human Rights Committee in Geneva. We formed political parties, even, to fight for our liberation. What exactly have we not done? Over the decades we've done this peaceful means. If you want to come out to protest, it's peaceful. We had no arms, no government, nothing. Then what has always been the response? Right from day one in 61, the response has always been what? Force, violence, shoot and killing. Kale, for people who know what Kale is. Cordon and search operations. Imprisonment, torture, taking people, dumping them in some cells and putting them through the motion of a so-called trial by a military tribunal. People who are not soldiers. This has been our lot since 61. It hasn't changed up to today. So when I hear people talking about, oh, all of this is talk, go back to peace. And I say, what peace are they talking about? We've never known peace. Never. Ever since we started fighting, our people started fighting the Germans. From Boya, they right up through to Bamada area. Every chiefdom rose and fought the Germans. We've never known peace. So nobody can come and tell us here that what we are doing actually, we have to return to peace because there's no peace. Everybody knows about the Bubu massacre when French Cameroon troops crossed the border in August 1961 and murdered people, 12 to 20 people in Bubu, for which they have now apologized up to today. Everybody knows about the Tombel massacre. Ask any person from Tombel, any Bakosi person. They will tell you there is not a family that was not involved in that massacre by French Cameroon. The story continues. If you want to launch political parties peacefully, what do? They deploy the military and they killed. And they told a lie. This obsession with Nigeria. Oh, they were Nigerians. People were trampled upon and so on. They don't even have the courage even to admit the crimes they commit. They don't. And every 1st October, they arrest our people, dump them in cells, kill those whom they want, with orders to shoot and kill. This has been our lot. Let anybody tell us whenever we ever enjoyed any period of peace, ever since we got into this tragedy of having some connection with French Cameroon. I can't think of any. So we've known no peace, and there's nothing to talk about return that will return to some form of peace or another. And so we're talking about decolonization, and that decolonization must go in tandem with decolonization of the exonym which we've been given. The names we've been called. Our people have never been involved in choosing the name we've been called. The British Cameroons, the British Southern Cameroons, the Southern Cameroon, West Cameroon, Northwest, Southwest region, province, Northwest, Southwest region. Now it's Noso. Wherever have our people ever been involved in choosing these exonyms? Never. It's like the slave. They give you a slave name. You have to bear it around your neck. But we said enough is enough. We ourselves decided to give ourselves a name. The toponym which you've chosen is Ambazonia. And this is consistent with the recommendation made by UNESCO in 1978. UNESCO said every African country is free to choose a name by which they wish to be called. You see a series of many African countries have changed their names. You know them. It's actually to throw away the colonial names. So we are on firm ground talking about Ambazonia, and Ambazonia has come to stay. It doesn't matter what people think, it has come to stay, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. And that is Ambazonia. We are not going to go back to French Cameroon, experience the kind of tragedy we've experienced with them throughout. They leads me to one thing, next thing, which is we must understand the enemy we are dealing with. If we don't understand the enemy we are dealing with, how do we fight that enemy? How do we confront that enemy? First thing is, as I said, the enemy is a colonial occupier oppressor. It's involved in colonialism. It is occupying Ambazonia. It is oppressing the people of Ambazonia. The evidence is unchallengeable. That means the agenda of French Cameroon is colonial subjugation. The legal term will call it colonial subjugation and servitude. You become a slave. They subjugate you. It's colonial slavery. And what French Cameroon is seeking to do is to legitimize the annexation it has carried out for colonization by occupying the territory of Ambazonia. And in order to whitewash all of this, it has got involved in what we call a fake narrative that it is waging a war in Ambazonia against what we call so-called secessionists and terrorists. That's what it's saying. But as far as I'm concerned, and everybody knows, the idea of secessionists and terrorists is a classic red herring of all colonizers throughout history. There's not one colonial authority that has never made this same accusation. All of them. When the oppressed rise up, you become what? A terrorist. When they challenge you about a territory, they call you a secessionist. You are seceding. There's none. All of African countries, if we were to go by that logic, seceded. They separated. Except, of course, Liberia and Ethiopia. Everybody. Because in legal terms, the territory, the colonial territory was the territory of the colonizer, legally. So when you start fighting for the colonizer to go, you are saying you want to grab the colonizer's territory. And that's why they call you that you are a secessionist. So this must be quite clear. Second thing you must know about the enemy is their tactic, their strategy is to break our will. And how do they go about this? They go about it by using traitors, the enemy within us. Throughout history, that has been a most effective way of dealing with the opponent. You know, you're fighting somebody. There's no other better way than to go and plant somebody in his own house, so that the person can subvert from inside. Very, very effective. And that's what they've been doing. They know their military, they can never win. The Americans told them in 2017. You remember, we went to Vietnam. We're the biggest power in the world. We had to leave. Don't think that because you have a small, what you call small people, and because you don't see them with any weapon, therefore you walk over them. It will not happen. It won't happen. So they know they can never win. So therefore, their strategy is to get traitors amongst us, to help them, to subvert us from within. So we must know that and see how we counter that kind of strategy. We must be able to counter that strategy. The third thing about the aggressor, we all know that it is a criminal state. The moment French Cameroon became an annexationist colonial state in occupation of Ambazonia, at that moment, the Ambazonian nationalism kicked up. And that explains why you see this ferocious resistance that has been going on for the past 5 years. People cannot understand. What basis? Our fighters never had any military training before. Never. Never even knew how to use a gun. They've held their own for the past 5 years. How do you explain that? This ferocious resistance. The colonizer is engaged in a war. But I want to suggest to you that in a war is ruthless. Do not expect any favors from the colonizer. Don't expect any favors. They will never do any favors. And so this means we have to fight as if the whole world is against us. And fight with all our might. Of course, the regime presents outside that it is an authority over us. We've rejected that for the past 5 years. Any election they try to hold, we say no. We've delegitimized their authority in our area, even though they still go around purporting the international community that we are still under them. They know that we are not. Another character of them, the first final character, is what they are doing now is they want to get us to sludge it out and tire our fighters. So in the end, they are tired, they are exhausted, and therefore cannot fight, and they give up. That's the strategy. But I think they're undermining the resilience of our fighters. Our fighters, we always say right from the beginning, this is a guerrilla warfare we're fighting. And guerrilla warfare is not a conventional warfare. The guerrilla warfare, you don't fight on the terms of your opponent, of the enemy. Even when they try to provoke you, tease you. You determine when you are going to fight, how you are going to fight, and where you are going to fight. And that determination falls on the advantage which you are going to get. The guerrilla is master of its own environment. It's master of the geography of his own area, the weather conditions of his own area, his people. That's why it's difficult. You can never defeat any guerrilla army. It's impossible. At one point, you might even think you have, but the people have, they bounce back, always bounce back. So, this leads me to the question that has often been asked. What is the state of the Ambazonian struggle? People ask. What is the state of the Ambazonian struggle? We have an incredibly strong and most compelling cause. For the past 6 years, the colonial oppressor has sought to denigrate us by saying we are secessionists, we are terrorists. But this is self-propaganda, self-interested propaganda. And it's a propaganda that has failed to get any attraction. Do you know of any country or any reputable media that has ever referred to us as secessionists or terrorists? No. Because the world knows better. So the enemy has been singing to itself this song about secessionists, terrorists, and so on and so forth. It has never worked. It's a propaganda. For me, what this tells me is that the world recognizes that we are fighting a very just cause. Of course, the world might not actively be supporting us the way France and other countries are backing French Cameroon. But the world is not obstructing us either. It is. I must understand that. So the world has not bought French Cameroon cock and bull story about secession or whatever thing it is. For a simple reason also. If you look at the world as it is now,
recording in progress.
There has been more in the contemporary world, there has been more of separation, of fission than fusion. Can you think of countries? Let's just put ourselves now since after the Second World War. Can you ever think of any two or more countries have come together? The contrary is countries are instead what? Separating. Separating. That is the trend in the world. So the world knows this. And especially if you have a situation like us, where there's one country that is an oppressor country, a colonial country, that is seeking to exterminate a people and to steal their territory and their resources. The world simply just says, no, this is not going to work. So I've heard people have said, well, but we are smaller in size and in population. French Cameroon is bigger in size and bigger in population. And the conclusion, therefore, is that we haven't got any chance at all against French Cameroon. I want to put it to you that all of that is not borne out by history and by reality. In Pidgin, they say, small no be sick, isn't it? Yes, we might be small. Yes, we might be small in size and in population. But we have many things in our favor. The fact that we have a good cause. French Cameroon hasn't got any good cause. If you talk to any of them, why are you people killing these people? Why are you fighting them? They come with some vague notion called what they call territorial integrity.
Prof, I'm going to unmute that phone. Let me unmute the phone.
What's going on?
It's fine. Is it okay?
Okay. So we refuse to be hypnotized by the population disparity between Ambazonia and French Cameroon. When you have a small country that is vigorous, small, well-educated, highly motivated population, it's very, very difficult to defeat that country. Very, very difficult. Near impossible. And French Cameroon cannot defeat Ambazonia, if only on that basis. We have a just cause. They don't have any just cause. You ask them why are they fighting, they will come out some vague notions of territorial integrity. When you ask them what is territorial integrity, they will not tell you. They won't tell you. You tell them, but if you say you are a sovereign independent state, you achieve independence, isn't it? When did you achieve independence? That is when the integrity of our territory got frozen. Even if you had legitimate claim to some territory outside, at that moment, it is excluded. You stick to our territory. You can then understand why they'll be running away from their independence celebration. They know the implications of that. So they manufacture a lie, which they call 20th May, or whatever thing they call it. And okay, 20th May. Which borders did you get at 20th May when you come there? No. So these people have been playing all kinds of games with us. So I'm very, very convinced that in terms of feasibility, independence of Ambazonia is going to be achieved. French Cameroon is not too big to lose the war. We've seen bigger countries that have lost wars before. Better armed, with better trained soldiers. They've lost them. So independence of Ambazonia will be achieved, irrespective of whatever view French Cameroon takes. It's going to happen. Our people have a mass that believes in independence. Our people are working seriously towards achieving that goal. There is a broad central coalition of the people of Ambazonia who emphatically desire independence. Our cause is an excellent one. It's a very compelling one. Our freedom fighters are extremely motivated. What other measure of motivation can you see by the fact that they die, they get killed? They never give up. Never give up. And they say themselves, they will never give up. They will fight to the last man standing. And that last man standing will be after you exterminate all the 8 million Ambazonians, which is an impossibility. Not even Hitler could achieve that feat. So our fighters are determined to secure our land, no matter how long that is going to take. And our resilience speaks in our favor. Like I said before, if you look on the side of the enemy, they have no cause at all. They have no reason why they're fighting. They have no cause. Their fighters are not motivated. There's no motivation. All their fighters do, when they recruit them, for them they are going to earn a salary. Every month they pay them a salary. That's all it is. It's like a job. The only difference is that this job one here, they're operating more like professional mercenaries. Because mercenaries, you pay them. That's what they are. They are mercenaries. Otherwise, there's no reason. They can't tell you why they're fighting. We also have empirical evidence which shows that clearly we shall achieve independence. We have international law on our side. We have history on our side. We have a culture on our side. We have a superior value system on our side. And the fact that Ambazonia is an English-speaking country, and so belongs to the English-speaking world, which is a dominant culture in the world, means we already have victory which is secure. If you look at history, there is never any people who have fought for decolonization that has failed. I can't think of any. There's none. And so we are not going to fail. That's why this struggle has lasted 6 months now, and it's still going. And each time, the more they kill, the more they destroy, the more galvanized our people are, the more determined our people are. So the killing simply strengthens us. The genocide they commit, far from terrorizing us and putting us off, instead actually galvanizes us, makes us even stronger and more determined. I can't think of any extended family in Ambazonia that has not been affected. I can't think of any. And I cannot think of any community in Ambazonia that has not been affected by all this. What is more, the concept of Ambazonia has now become a matter of faith. Ambazonia has transmuted into an ideology, right now as we're talking, a liberation ideology. And like they say, an idea, an ideology whose time has come, cannot be defeated. You can't kill it. Military experts have also computed that if French Cameroon think they can defeat Ambazonia, then they will have to have 1 soldier for every 50 Ambazonians. If you look at 8 million Ambazonians, it means you have to have an army of 160,000 troops stationed in Ambazonia fighting every day. That's an impossibility. Even if you were to reduce the population and say just 4 million people, you have 80,000 troops in Ambazonia fighting every day. That's an impossibility. They cannot afford that kind of force. We are talking just about a colonial force in Ambazonia. They still have to take care of their own territory. Equip their force. Pay them. I don't see that being a possibility. They cannot. You can have those troops garrisoned in Ambazonia and fighting. In any event, there's one thing overrunning a territory and occupying it. It's a wholly different game altogether to administer continuously the occupied territory for any length of time. Once you do that, what simply happened was the guerrilla go on to another stage of the fighting. And therefore, it never ends. And in this calculation the experts have made, they say it does not matter Even if Ambassador just have sticks and stones, French Cameroon will still not win this war. It's not possible. I'm not too sure what the French advise and what the French tell them. But of course, so long as his French Cameroon lives have been expended, what does France care? It doesn't care. You know, you can kill their own people and so on. So one thing is clear as far as I see it. We are never, ever going to return to any form of cohabitation with French Cameroon. Not in a million years. That's an impossibility. Not even if the international community were to put pressure on us. We will not accept it. We can never go back to the French Cameroon house of bondage and slavery. No. We will not go back, not even in the name of so-called peace. Because, as I've said, there's no peace for us. So it won't happen. So, my advice has always been to the colonizer. Time has come for them to face the reality. What is that reality? Father Christmas from Ambazona is over. Ambazona is no longer a milking cow, where they can come and plunder, loot resources. That is over. And so they must now learn how to organize themselves, how to manage their own affairs, and stop depending on Ambazonia. They are marching forward. Running water, they say, does not run backwards. It moves. So too this struggle. Very soon, I do believe, our night of weeping shall be the morn of song. But at this point, even as we are engaged in this struggle, just let me again express my utter frustration about something. I've been extremely disappointed by certain forms of negative conduct that seem to have gained amongst a certain section of us recently. We have seen fighting and killing amongst our fighters. We've seen it has become now notorious cases of kidnapping for ransom. We've seen cases of hostage taking of our own people. We are supposed to be the protectors of our people. Sadly enough, we do not seem to be discharging that role. We have instead presenting a danger to our people. I am saying, and saying it loud and clear, no form of hostage taking, no form of kidnapping for ransom. It doesn't matter how you try to camouflage it and try to sugarcoat it and claim that it's a form of tax or claim that it is some whatever thing you want to call it. It does not change the criminality of that particular conduct, and it must end. It's not serving our people. It is not serving the liberation. So I urge every good Ambazonian to denounce these forms of conduct. They don't help us at all. How come that we are always very strong when it comes to inflicting pain and suffering on our own people, never on the enemy? This is something very embarrassing. I've said this before, and some people ganged up to attack me, but I will never tire of saying it. I know of no situation at all where this kind of people engaged in a liberation struggle, engaged in this kind of conduct, against the same people they are supposed to be protecting. Why? I pray that this whole thing ends now. And I urge all good Ambazonians to support me in denouncing this kind of conduct. Sure, there must be cleaner ways of fighting our fight. We don't need to engage in criminality to be able to say we are fighting a liberation war. And this brings me to the international community, where some members of the international community have expressed dismay at the fact that we are behaving in this particular way. And then we blame French Cameroon for being our colonizer, for being our oppressor, the very thing we do ourselves against our own people. No. I am not convinced that that is the way to move forward in fighting this fight. And the international community is not convinced at all that's the way to fight this fight. Go after the enemy. Let's see. So the international community people talk about quite often. This is an area where we made very modest progress. And part of the reason why we make modest progress is because of things like what I've just said. It puts people off. You come to cry to them for assistance, for understanding. And then you do the same thing you are complaining against the oppressor. So quite often, they don't listen to you. You become a human rights abuser yourself, on the same footing like the oppressor. The international community, of course, remember the way the international system is organized. It's state-driven. And this kind of arena where states are involved, we can get involved there because we are not yet a state. We can't go to the AU assembly. We cannot go to the UN assembly. We can't have any diplomatic relations with any country at all, with any international organization, precisely because we are not yet a state recognized by anybody. But our recognition is being impeded by the fact that we cannot even respect some basic rules in the conduct of our struggle. We can't. And it puts people off. But of course, I know we lack the funding to be able to move around to contact non-state actors and so on. But I think that's a problem that can be taken care of. Because many of the people I've spoken to denounce the kind of conduct I've been denouncing. And the more we do carry on that kind of behavior, they're not going to get much funding from our people. They won't. Because the third problem about the international community, like I said earlier, is we have not been able to frame our message to them in a coherent manner and a consistent manner. We give them multiple signals, and in the end they're rather confused as to exactly what we want. And for me, one of the most disastrous things about us, linked to the issue of kidnapping, for ransom, hostage taking, is the fact that Ambazonians are incurably a divided and indisciplined people. I've never read about a people like this. They are very good at insulting people, and they will insult you from morning till evening. They will insult their collaterals, descendants, ascendants, and so on. People, they know me. Sometimes you don't even know them. They don't even know you. This kind of anarchy must stop. There is nothing that can be achieved in an environment or where people are indisciplined. No, you can't. Anarchy will not take us anywhere. And because we do all of these things, foreign countries always go back. International community always say, oh, well, we are neutral. We pursue issues when our interests are at stake. The interests here are defined in economic terms and also in strategic terms. So, they don't get involved. Their national interest. Because we've helped them by projecting them that we are just as bad as the colonizer we've been defining, we've been fighting against, or purportedly fighting against. At one time, we were persistent in our demand that we must have an international investigation into what is happening in Ambazonia. I still think that's the thing we need to keep on pressing on, because it solves us a lot of issues, resolve a lot of issues, you know. And one other reason why I'm insisting, because like they've said, until you have an independent investigation, the rival stories remain mere allegations, or they are. This side is alleging, this side alleging. So you need some independent somebody. And we say we are open to that. Come and investigate. In the face of all of this, so which is the suitable way forward, as far as we are concerned? I know there have been talk about us having a revolutionary council, but I'll come to the revolutionary council just presently. People have been talking about a unified structure, revolutionary council, mediation and negotiation, and of course a very strong fighting force. That, of course, is a condition sine qua non. Without a strong fighting force, the issue of negotiation just dies down. You can't be going to talk about negotiation or mediation from a position of weakness. The enemy must understand that you are not coming to a table because you are weak. Because if that is the understanding, the enemy will impose conditions on you, knowing that you are weak. And here, there are two things. People talk about mediation, they talk about negotiation. These are two different things completely. People tend to confuse them. Mediation is simply where you have somebody trying to bring two sides together to start talking. And they fall off. That's what it is. The mediator is not one that is coming to resolve the issue. He doesn't. He's just trying to bring. And in an intractable situation like our own, it is very, very difficult to have a mediator who is weak. I don't mean any disrespect. I want to say that I'm not convinced that Switzerland is a strong mediator. But the simple reason it cannot put boots on the ground. It can, when things happen, they say, no, this is where things must go. I know the Swiss claim a state of neutrality, but it's only this far they can go as a mediator. For negotiation, people tend to think that when we talk about negotiation, we are saying that it's going to get to a table there, we start negotiating independence. No. People are mistaken. Independence is not good at negotiating there, people. You don't go to negotiate independence. Because if you say you're going to negotiate independence, it means that you can go there and you fail. And if you fail, therefore you go back to your servitude. No. Negotiation has to do with consequential matters. And the issue of independence is an acquis politique. You already acquired it. You got it. But you're realistic enough that there are certain pending issues that need to be resolved as between the two parties. That's what it is. And people must understand this before they start jumping into, people are going to negotiate independence. I'm going to negotiate and bring independence to you guys. No, that's not how these things work. Of course, in any case, I don't think negotiation is going to come. French Cameroon, we know, is merely playing word games to give the impression that it is interested, but it's never interested. And it is not interested because it knows that once you get to the negotiation table, you're not going to negotiate independence. Independence already been acquired by force of arms. And all they are going to do to resolve certain consequential matters. They know it. But also they know very well that they lack also a unifying front. They are as splintered as you can think. Various faction, various group. This faction says this one is saying this one is supporting this one is this. In that kind of confusion, They cannot even talk about negotiation. You are going to negotiate with who? And in any event, as a matter of principle, Ambazonia shall never accept, if we ever get to that stage of negotiation, that among the people there from the enemy side are people who are implicated in genocide in Ambazonia, who have blood on their hands. You can't be seen that talk who have blood on their hands. On what basis? But I think right now they will hard put to find people with clean hands in that country to be able to come and negotiate. There won't be. So negotiation is still far, far, far off. Revolutionary Council. Now let me say this. The name, what is in the name? Somebody say, what is in the name? The Revolutionary Council or whatever thing it is and so on. But I think the spirit of that council is what matters. We need to understand. Not necessarily that we must use the word a revolutionary council. Right. The idea is that we have tried all kinds of things, right? And we think that perhaps we need to move to try something else. There is no advance guarantee that it is going to succeed. But at the same time, nothing prevents us from trying something else. Right. So we shouldn't get stuck just the name Revolutionary Council, because that council is still going to be made up by Ambazonians, the kind of people I've just described to you. People who are indisciplined, the people who are quarrelsome, the people who are always, they will be the same people. And the same infighting will happen there. So maybe what we may try to look at is to ask ourselves, what are the critical areas of this struggle for which we need cooperative action? People have expressed a view that there are three critical areas, right? Defense, diplomacy, and communication. If we can agree on that, I think it is possible to set up a council or a committee, as I say, whatever name you want to call it, that can focus on these three areas. And let all the excellencies connect to be excellencies, or whatever, various groups, whatever, But at least we agree that we can cooperate on these three key areas that will be run by a council, a committee, or what name you want to call it. I don't see. In 2018, when I first moved to the idea, when I talked about Revolutionary Council, there were just about 4 or 5 groups then, maybe less. Now there are over 2 dozen. You see all of those who are already going around, that their excellency trotting around like peacock, even though they don't have any plumage to show. You see them actually dissolving their groups and coming to existence. It's not going to happen. We must know our own people. But I do believe that they can agree that, look, frankly, those 3 areas, yes. Let's have a common understanding and set up a committee or council that can manage those 3 things, drawn from different... in fact, not even drawn from all the groups. Why can't we look at our most qualified people who can do this job? This thing of only looking because we are 20 groups, people must come from all the 20 groups. No. Surely we can say, okay, in the area of defense, we can identify this guy here. He's proven himself. Let him be part of it. In the area of communication, we see this guy, let him be part of it. In the area of diplomacy, this one, let him be part of it. Surely we can do that. Sure. That's a minimum. And once we do that, I think we are fine. And within a short time, everybody will realize that we are serious people. And that will mean business, the way forward. The other question that was asked was about CND. Toronto, after Toronto, so what? CND, as the name says, is for dialogue coalition and negotiation. Yeah. So what they've been trying to do is trying to get all the groups to agree. That is a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge. It will never happen. But CND has been trying. And recently, they had a mini Toronto in Stuttgart. where a much more narrow group of people, of groups were invited. What I do understand is they are trying to work now on a memorandum of understanding in one area. That area is communication. That the group should agree. But you know there's a big trust deficit. I can tell you this. This group doesn't trust this one doesn't trust this one. And that is making things very, very difficult to advance. But I hope, and I wish that the CNG does succeed. And I'm hoping that if they are focused now on communication, I don't know whether the intention is to move on to some other area to do the same thing. I don't know, But this is what they are on now, trying to get that. But even having that memorandum of understanding, I can tell you, it's not as easy as it sounds. What about rekindling diplomatic effort? That's an area we need to get involved in. As it has been said, we must be able to recognize international moments and cash on them. One is the one which everybody's been talking about, even in French Cameroon, the demise of the president of that country. There's a lot of noise. Yesterday I was following somebody who wrote something. It's a French Cameroonian, and he talks about the apocalypse that is going to happen upon the death of Mr. Biya. Now, when that happens, we must be able to ask ourselves, where do we stand in the face of all of that? The other international moment that has just fallen on our laps is this Russian thing, isn't it? That has just fallen on our laps. The fact that French Cameroon has gone and concluded a military pact with Russia and with Turkey. Very, very interesting. Because Turkey is a Muslim country. Russia is an authoritarian regime. And it's amazing how authoritarian regimes always gravitate towards each other, as it were. So, where do we stand as far as the Russian thing is concerned? I know in the enemy camp, they have been dangling that to us and saying, well, you people are going to see, we have Russia now on our side, and we're going to deal with you guys. That's the kind of message, the kind of sending, in the hope that that's going to scare or frighten us. But let me disappoint them. There is no way, and anybody who is seeing what is happening now, that Russia has the troops and the arm to spare to French Cameroon. It's not going to happen. Russia has its own battles, which is still busy trying to fight. And especially now that there are daggers drawn directly with America. Did anybody read what the American general was saying today?
No.
After the Russian threatened America?
No.
About 2-3 weeks ago, the Russian ambassador in the United Kingdom threatened America and said Russia will bring its full might. America was going to feel it, attack America. Today, a Russian, the general, America, responded and simply said, throughout history, people have underestimated America, and they've done so at their own cost. He's telling Russia, he's telling North Korea, even China, all of them. Anybody that messes with America now or in the future will get a full response from America. And they will regret they ever tried. Now, do you think it is this kind of Russia, first this country that is going to start now sending troops to French Cameroon, to help French Cameroon to Amazonia? It's not going to happen. Or weapons, not going to happen. It's still struggling with Ukraine. It will occupy some island there where they're in dispute with Japan. That's an issue. They still have to resolve. These things are happening. So I don't see that happening. No troops are going to come. No arms are going to come. The only possibility is for Russia to use what its mercenary outfit called Wagner. It's okay, you go and do the job. Unfortunately for French Cameroon, this is the bad news which they don't even understand. Wagner is not coming for free. Like every mercenary outfit, there's a cost to it. And the cost is not chicken feed. It is high. It is high. Let me just give an example. South Africa had a mercenary outfit. It was called Executive Outcomes. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
It was a mercenary outfit. The Angolan government was fighting with Jonas Savimbi, the MPL government. And Jonas Savimbi occupied the area where they had diamonds, using to that army and so on. And the Angolan government found it very, very difficult to overcome Savimbi. They hired Executive Outcome at the cost of $40 million. And they moved in and did the job. They simply just killed Savimbi. End of story. That was it. That was it. Executive Outcome then moved to Sierra Leone, where the Kaba government was fighting Roof. That was not as complicated as Angola, much more easier. So Executive Outcome said, okay, we'll help you. We'll stay here for as long as needed. But you pay us $500,000 every month. In addition, our mercenaries here, you give us much 2,000 as pocket change every month, each of them, for long as we are here. In addition, you have diamonds here. We have free access to loot the diamond as you listen. That is how costly it was for Sierra Leone. French Cameroon, Wagner comes. Right now, they don't even have money. So where are they going to pay? What money are they going to pay Wagner? They should learn what is happening in Central African Republic. The Russians simply control that diamond part in Central African Republic, looting it for Wagner. So anyway, look at this whole thing. It's a bad deal for them. I don't see that happening, that they are going to be able to have money to pay Wagner to do their thing for them. So the final thing, what about the responsibility of intellectual, what I call the intelligentsia, which you are? For a long time, I think the Ambazonian intelligentsia has laid back and let others run the show. That should not have been. We should have taken control right from the word go and given direction, strategic direction to the struggle. We allowed less competent people to do that. We find ourselves after 5 years in a horrible mess. Now we have the task to repair that mess and now to give it a strategic direction. The Ambazonian intelligentsia must realize that quite apart from the funding, everybody knows about funding, contribution to funding, the head is key, is very, very important. No struggle goes on just by arms alone. If the head is not there, then frankly, we are not going to make any progress. So Ambazonian intellectuals must contribute ideas and develop strategic plans for action that will significantly move the struggle forward in every area. That is a challenge for the elites, Ambazonian elite, the Ambazonian intelligentsia. They must. Of course, as people have said, if we don't have money, of course, money is key to all of these things. But if we have the money, but we don't use our brains, then how far? We're not going to make very much progress. So, I believe that the struggle equally needs intellectual output, especially in critical areas, which we all know. Right? Science, technology, IC, whatever, all those areas. we need them. Because man is not ruled by force alone, but also by ideas. And it is the duty of the ambassador intelligentsia to generate ideas that will significantly turn things around in this particular struggle. Sorry if I have been too long. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Prof. You've not disappointed us. It was expected. We are indeed happy. We are excited. And again, we can't say it enough. You've been steadfast. Even when some of us were still young, we remember. And you've not wavered even when some of your peers have been singing a different song. Again, our prayer has always been that we all sing and shout together when we reach where.